Hi, I'm Captain Mike, and I know some of you are probably wondering what this Christmas tree has to do with do-it-yourself wood stain. And I use the word wood stain very loosely in that the stain that I'm fixing to show you how I make can be used on many different things. But the backstory here is the original one of these Christmas trees was made probably 30-odd years ago when I made a lot of wood crafts, probably everything you could imagine. But I used a commercial color wood stain at that time. I don't have any of it anymore, and I made this for a friend. Excuse me. And I needed some stain. I had some green wood, some kind of stain. I don't know what it was. It was in a jar, and I tried using it without success. The star up here is just craft paint. It's just painted one coat, and the little presents down here are craft paint. But I like the stain that shows the wood grain through. So I started thinking, I don't have any wood stain that's colored. I don't want to buy it. I looked it up. It was very expensive. So I need to try to make it. So that's where we are with the Christmas tree. So with that said, let me get some supplies and stuff out here, and I'm going to explain to you how I do it. If you're like me, you have a lot of paint hanging around your shop. I have the standard craft paint in all these little bottles. Now, this is only part of what I have. I have it for every application you can think of. And I also have pigment, acrylic pigment in tubes. I've had it for quite a while. I don't know, I bought it for something. Maybe I was painting a picture or something at that time. A lot of this stuff is probably older than my average viewer. But this is where we're going to start. This is all water-based. We're going to use an oil-based paint that comes in a tube like this also, just as a side, to show you that that can be done, because we're going to make both water-based and oil-based stains. But we're going to concentrate mainly on the water-based because they're the simplest, the cheapest, and probably will do best for most of your crafting projects. So with that, let me show you the supplies that I have and what we're going to use, and I'll keep this just as basic as I can. I'm probably going to bounce back and forth, so please don't leave me. Kind of try to watch this video. I think it'll be informative. So with that, let me get to all the supplies you're going to need. Now this looks like a lot of stuff, but it's really not. This is just the different things that you can use. I'll show you how I'm going to use all of it. You can choose the method that is best for you, and we'll go from there. But let's just go through it right quick. Probably the most important thing you're going to need for this project is some latex gloves, and it's obvious why you will need those. So get you some latex gloves. I'm sure you already have them. And then, of course, the next most important thing is the colors. We're going to primarily be dealing with water-soluble colors here. So I have both here the Gumbacher acrylics. That's a very pigmented color. You all know what that is anyway, but it's just highly pigmented. More pigmented than the craft paint. And I have three colors here, some primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. And that's what we're going to mix up, because from that you can make a lot of other colors. Now with that said, if you use craft paint, as you well know, it comes in every color of the rainbow. So if this works well for you using the craft paint, you don't have to mix anything. Just go get whatever color suits you that you want to make a stain of. Go for it and try it. Now, you're going to need some containers. And I use these little empty baby food jars. If you're fortunate enough to have a young one in the house and you're buying baby food, save the jars. If you don't, maybe some of your daughter or your granddaughter or some friends or relatives just get the containers. But any kind of container you can put a top on and it will seal good will work. And this container, I'll show you what I use it for a little later, but this is just an empty color glue bottle where my granddaughters were making that slime. That's the big thing. They make tons of it, and I save all the bottles. And I'll show you what that's for later. Now, as far as the medium to carry the pigment, you have water, just regular H2O. It comes, as you well know, as a clear liquid, and you can put it in a container. You will need, for one of the experiments, you'll use some alcohol. Now, I have a video on making alcohol paint. I've never tried this with stain. I can see another video coming here where I compare alcohol paint to alcohol stain. We'll more on that later, maybe. We'll get to that later. And then, of course, I have this water-based poly that looks milky here, but once it dries, it's going to dry clear and maybe shiny. So maybe you'll get some wood stain that will show the grain and a little shine too. We don't know. I haven't done this, haven't found a video where anybody else has, but we're going to try it. And then, I mentioned the alcohol. You can get the alcohol if it's Dollar Tree like this for $1. I'm using 91%. I would imagine anything would work. And this, of course, is the polyurethane that I'm using. It's just, I happen to have a lot of it around. It's water soluble. And of course, I didn't mention it in the supply part, but you'll need a napkin, a bunch of paper towels probably, and some bamboo skewers. I use them to stir with. On the other side of the coin, so to speak, is going to be the oil-based products. And this is Minwax, and it's natural stain. And when it goes on the wood, it looks kind of golden here, but when it goes on the wood, it doesn't really add much to it. So I'm hoping that we can color that. And this is what I bought. It's just Minwax penetrating stain. It will go on. The wood will, the shine will remain flat. It'll just take the color. So I don't know what that's going to do. I've never used any natural, but that's what I'm going to use. And probably I'm going to mix this with both water-based pigments and some oil-based pigments. The oil-based pigments I don't have right now. I'm going to have to pick a tube up from my son. But in the meantime, we're going to play with this water-based stuff. So, oh, one last thing too. This is a neat thing I'm going to try. Picked this up at Walmart last night. It's RIT liquid. And I'm going to try that. It's not my idea. Somebody else. You know, this video has been duplicated 1,000 times. And so this is not my idea. It's some of these things may be my improvements. But we will see. But I'm going to try this really swell purple RIT. So that's what we've got. We're going to clear this table. We're going to come back with some things, some mixing, and some results. Okay? Y'all hang in there. In this part of the video, we're going to concentrate on the water-soluble paints and pigments. I'm going to measure off some pigment, actually some yellow craft, into this water and just kind of give you a rough idea. I'm not going to go through all of these on the video. It's just too long, but what I will do, after I've mixed this one, I will, off camera, mix the rest of these, and I'll make notes as to how they mix. But one of the things I didn't mention is you're going to need some kind of a scale. Now, just for reference, I have decided to mix all of these 1 to 10. That means I'm going to have 1 ounce of whatever liquid I choose, whether it be alcohol, poly, or water, and I'm going to add 1/10 of an ounce of whatever type of material I use, whether it's the craft paint or whether it's the pigment. I'm going to just use 1/10 of an ounce. Same with the RIT over there when I do it. And that will give sort of a constant reference of which pigment, which paint is stronger, and then from that we can kind of determine whether you need to put more pigment or less pigment. This is a total experiment, and your choices will probably be different than mine. Now we'll turn on my little scale here, and it reads in ounces, and I have H2O here, water, and we're just going to take some paint, and I'm going to try, I hope I can just put 1/10 of an ounce in here. We'll see how it goes. Kind of hard to tell. That's a half an ounce, right? I mean, half of a tenth. We're getting there. So just kind of hang in here with me. It should come on out. Something's decided to stop the bottle up. Okay, there you go. That's a little bit more, but we'll clean it up. I slop some on the outside. Leave it to me. So I'm going to take my swizzle stick or my bamboo skewer, and I'm going to start to break it up. Now this seems to be mixing quite well. Okay, now I'm going to clean this off before I close it up. And then I'm going to close it and shake it. First I'll clean off the rest of this mess. Ah, you caught me. I didn't have my gloves on. Well, one of the reasons I didn't have my gloves on is my dog Rocky reached up there and pulled them off on the floor and proceeded to chew on them. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking with it. Okay. You need a real tight container for this, because you start shaking it like this and you'll just put that stuff everywhere. So that is our yellow. That's it. 1 to 10. 1 ounce of liquid material, 1/10 of an ounce of whatever type of pigment. Now I'm going to do the rest of these, and then we'll come back, kind of give you some update on how they mixed, and then the next step will be to apply them to some wood. Well, I've got most of this stuff mixed up. Let's just see if I can remember which one's done what. There's been a couple of minor issues. I don't really know how important they are. Only time will tell. The first thing I would like to mention is that make sure that you shake up all your enamels really well, because when you upend one to measure out your 1/10 of an ounce, if there's any debris in there, it'll stop that little hole up. You'll squeeze too hard, and all of a sudden you've got 1.2 or 1.3 tenths of an ounce. Ask me how I know. So, you know, be careful with that. These are all old paints. I expected that. And this gumbacker is a lot softer than another brand that I have. But we'll see how the pigmentation goes on it. It was really no problem to squeeze it off a little dollop at a time and kind of knock it off with the stick and drop it in there. Now, it all shook up really well. Of course, the water, you'd expect it to do well. This is the water. The poly seems to have done really well too. It's thicker. It has more viscosity to it than the water does. The alcohol did mix. There's some debris in the bottom, and you can see maybe the little tiny specks of pigment here. I'm going to continue to shake it, especially before I apply it to the wood. Now, the only advantage that I could see with alcohol is how fast it dries. Other than that, I don't see any advantage to using alcohol over water. But like I said, I'm going to do a comparison between pigments and alcohol and the alcohol inks on the video that I made there. Again, with the red, it's the same thing. The poly is a little thicker. It started out a little thicker. H2O, it did well. The red seems to have mixed better in the alcohol than the blue or the yellow. And there's the yellow. Can you see the little specks there? Okay. You can shake them up, and we'll see how that works when I apply it. H2O worked great, as did the poly, and it's a little thicker. And this is the Hypolar acrylic that I used, kind of like toothpaste. And as you would expect, it mixed pretty well in the water. I've got a little on the side there. I've got to mix a little better. The poly did well. The alcohol, again, even had a little bigger spots. Again, I don't know what that means. We'll find out. But those are the things that went on. Now, I mixed the Rit dye. And this just happens to be purple because what the heck. And as you'd expect in water, it mixed well. Now, the intensity of these colors on wood with one coat is what we're going for. So we'll see how they all stack out. an interesting thing. I tried mixing some of the acrylic in the Minwax natural oil, and it did not do well at all. It didn't mix at all. Now, I saw a video where a guy said he mixed it, okay? Not going to say he didn't. Not going to say it can't be mixed. I'm just saying that that acrylic. Now, I have not tried one of these, and I will. I'll try one of these. I have an extra bottle over there with a little Minwax in it, and I'll try that, and if it's worth mentioning, I'll mention it. But right now, that's kind of a no-go. Now, I didn't have any oil-based paint handy. My son was supposed to get me some, but I have not got around to getting it from him. So I rambled around out in the barn, and I found this old, I'm talking really old, little half pint of royal blue oil-based enamel. I paid 20 cents for it on sale. That's how old it is. So I stirred it all up, and I put it in with the Minwax. And it's an interesting color of blue. As you can see, it's not the same thing. Didn't expect it to be. So we're going to see how this works. The oil base. This is all oil based right here. So we're going to see how that applies to wood. That'll be just like your regular stain that you get. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clear this mess away, and I'm going to put this on some wood. There's no need for me to show you putting it on the wood. I may do one or the other, but I'm not going to put all of them because it's simple. If you've ever stained anything before or washed anything before, then you just take this stuff and you put it on with a piece of cloth or a brush, and you wipe it off if it needs to be, and the grain shows through. That's all there is to it, and that's not necessarily what this video is about. But I'm going to go ahead and get all my pieces of wood out here, go ahead and stain them, and then we will see what they do, and again, I'll make comment on how that's going to work out for me. So you guys just stand by. Okay, let's see what we got here. I have put all of that concoction that I made on all these boards. Let me give you a little technical details first. For the test, I used white pine or fir, call either one, mainly because of this light color. It's inexpensive. I have a lot of scrap, and it's easy to sand. This is yellow pine here, probably. It's a little darker color, but it kind of gives you the idea on what is going on here. A little tip on wood and sanding wood, and to get the smoothest finish that you can before we carry on with the rest of this is, after you sanded your wood, in this case I sanded, I think, with about 320 garnet paper with an electric sander. I just knocked it out because that's about all I do with my crafts. If you'll take some water and spritz it on your wood, just spritz it on there, not soak it, let it dry, that will raise the grain. And once you've raised the grain, now this is all prior to the color, naked wood, and once you've raised the grain and it's dried good, take you some steel wool. I know you all got steel wool because I use it for everything in my shop, and go over it just like you would the sandpaper, and it will knock all of that raised grain down really, really nice. And then you'll be prepared to put whatever finish that you want, whether it's any kind of finish. It doesn't really matter what we're doing here, or something entirely different. The other thing I told you that I was going to show you was what these little bottles here were for. You know, my granddaughters make that slime. I mixed up some of this stuff in the bottle. Now, this is not a great idea, but I'm just going to share it because I went to the trouble of doing it. You can put it in these bottles. In this case, it's green. It's the only green that I have. And you can put it on, and then you can rub it in with a cloth, or your finger in this case, you know, whatever you want to do, and then you can wipe it off. And that's just, you got it in the bottle. If you don't have anything but a bottle, that's fine. That's just a little tip. No biggie, no biggie. Not hardly worth the trouble, but it was just an idea I had while I was in a semi-conscious state. All right, we're going to finish this thing up. I'm going to show you what we got. Now, I want you to remember that this was all mixed at 1 part, 1 ounce of liquid, whatever the type, and 1/10 of an ounce of pigment or color that I chose. That's 1 to 10. I can tell you already that in most cases it's not enough. But depending on what you're going to do, depending on the color you want, the depth of the color you want, that will be your choice. You can up the pigment to 2 to 1, whatever you want to do, or 10 to 2, excuse me, 10 to 2, 10 parts or whatever, how you want to do it. The more pigment you have to work with, the more intense color you're going to have. So, go away, Roxy, go away. You're going to stick your big old fat head in my video. So, that being said, let's go with what we've got. Here is the blue. And she's just about not going to let me do this. Okay, this is the blue, okay? And H2O, as I expected, works better. It's a little bit more intense. It soaks in quicker. Followed by the poly, which is basically water-based. And if you left enough of this on there, it would have shined. But it serves no purpose for just rubbing it off, which is what I done. But it's an idea. If you wanted to, say, add some color to your polyurethane that you were doing, then just don't wipe it off. Spray it on, paint it on with a brush, whatever, and see what you get. See if it dries shiny with the color you want. The last one that I did was the alcohol. It did not soak in like I thought. It's the lightest of the bunch. But that's what you got. Darker all the way down to here. And this is the natural wood. This is what it looks like. Now, this red here was the craft colors, okay? And they come out more pinkish or whatever. And I guess that's because I didn't put enough color. But again, 1 to 10, you up it or down, whatever you want to do. H2O, water, is darker. Medium dark for the polyurethane, the alcohol, and that's what you get. The yellow is the same way. Only a shade or two darker, but it's darker. All the way down. And this is craft paint. This stuff right here. Okay, now we get to this stuff right here, this paste. It is a redder color. Although it's close, but it's redder. If you wanted to go really red, you just have to up the pigment. But again, the alcohol is the lightest. Now, just for grins and giggles, here is the RIT. This is the RIT mixed 1 to 10. I hope that comes out. I should have put it on this wood, but I didn't. It's just a really, really light lavender. Not a bad color. I went ahead and put some on this right out of the RIT bottle. It's more purpley, okay? Now, the next one that I did, it just didn't come out at all. Now, it will come out, but in fairness to this, I used the paint that was too old and the pigment was weak. When I get some proper oil colors, or if you have some oil colors, try mixing the oil colors in the Minwax. I think it's going to be an interesting experiment. I may just have to do a video strictly on oil colors. I don't know, but you didn't get anything. See, it just didn't come out. The yellow, this really ugly, nasty stuff here, it did come out kind of yellowy, but it's, I guess because the pigment got drug around on this. So the oil right now is not something that I want to work with. I might at a later date if I have a reason to, but there's no reason to use anything at this particular point but the watercolors because they work good, the water-soluble stuff. It works good, it's cheap, it's easy to work with. You can intensify the color by adding more pigment, and when you're through with it, you can put clear polyurethane on top of it or whatever you want to finish it up. So pretty much that's my experiment. Roxy didn't have a whole lot of input. She's aggravating. She drug my gloves off. And now she wants to be petty because she knows it's getting time to go to the house and eat supper. So that's it. That's my experiment on making your own wood dyes or stains, whatever you want to call them. And I hope it helped a little bit. It's probably a longer video than I wanted to make. But I hope you learned something. If you've got some ideas, put them in the comments right down below. And I'll give them a shot. I'll try them and get back to you on how they worked. And I appreciate you watching this video. So with that, I'm Captain Mike, and Roxy and I are out of here.